fairly simple essay in the sense that it's not very complicated. There's a definite structure to it, which we will get to in a short bit. But before we do that, I just want to take you all over the agenda for the day. So I want to introduce the UK applications very briefly. That's the first thing that we will do. Secondly, we'll think about what the purpose of the SOP is. Thirdly, we'll come to the structure of the SOP. This will be a tentative structure. Of course, you're allowed to play around, explore your own methods to do it, etc. And then we'll discuss how we can make our own SOPs stand out and maybe do something that's unique. And in that, write an essay that's compelling and unique. All right. So if there were two things I would say that we need to know before we start writing our SOPs, here's the two things. First, applying to the UK is a rigorous process. It is very intensive, and studying there is highly academically oriented. They pay less attention to your extracurriculars and more to your co-curriculars. Now, there's a fine line between the two. Your co-curriculars support what you've been studying in school, which is your curriculum, and your extracurriculars are things that are outside of it. So sports, art, things like those sort of take a secondary position when you're applying to the UK. And while writing the SOP, what we're going to focus more on is the activities that have supported your academic learning. So this can include things like online courses. This can include things like debates, mock parliaments, MUNs, if you're applying to, for example, political science. Similarly, other things similarly. And the second thing that I would say we need to know about is the UCAS portal. So this is a portal that we don't explore. A lot of students don't explore enough. Of course, you have to fill out details. Of course, you have to refer to the UCAS portal for understanding the requirements. But something that the UCAS portal also has, and a lot of people don't make use of, is a lot of resources and guidelines. So things to do with how to write your SOP or how to crack an interview. All of these things are available on the UCAS portal. And I strongly recommend that we all go over it properly before we start applying. So today is the 9th of August, and you can start submitting your UCAS applications starting the 6th of September. So that leaves us with less than a month. And if we haven't started doing all of this yet, we should start today. And here's a quick checklist that we can have a look at. By now, you should have given your IELTS, your language proficiency test. If not, I strongly recommend that you register today, get a date, get a location, and start preparing for it. That's the most important thing. You cannot apply to the UK as an Indian student if you haven't taken the IELTS. Second, your college list. Now, this requires a great deal of preparation, research, discussing with your peers, your teachers, etc. And you finally come up with 5 schools that you will apply to, again, through the UCAS portal. Now, I would personally recommend that you have one dream university out of the 5. 2 of them or 3 of them should be fair matches, and 1 or 2 last ones should be your safety schools that you're fairly certain that you will get into. Just make sure that this is a good balance and you're not applying only to the top schools, although yes, we do want to aim high. Just make sure that this is a good balance so that we're not left stranded in the end. The third thing, very important, is your recommendation letter. Now, this can really add value to your application. Now, your recommender can be a subject teacher in school or your school counselor, a teacher that really knows you well, who understands your intellectual curiosity, who understands your intellectual pursuits so far, someone who can really recommend you strongly to a university. That can really make you stand out against other applicants, and a good time to talk to your teacher to help you with your to write a recommendation letter for you is now. So if you haven't done these 3 things by now, I recommend that we get to it right away and do it as soon as possible before you even start working on your SOP. All right, now having done all of these things, we finally get to the personal statement. Now, why is a personal statement important? Well, remember that this is the only quantitative aspect of your application that anyone reading your application will see, right? So this is a unique opportunity for all applicants to showcase their qualities, experiences, motivations. And this is an essay that allows them to stand out and demonstrate the suitability for the course that they're applying to. Now, it is through your personal statement that you can demonstrate individuality. How do you stand out against the rest of the applicants? So, for example, um, 6 other students applying to the course that I'm applying to may have the same grades, may have similar academics activities, but what will make me stand out is my personal statement, right? So make sure that you plan way ahead in advance and show that you're unique and that and you show off your individual skills here. Secondly, your motivations. Why do you want to study the course that you're applying to? And why is it that you're a better applicant than the rest? This is where you bring in your motivation. You talk about your commitments, the things that you've already done in this field that show that you have an active interest. And this is not just something that you've suddenly woken up and decided to do. Your intellectual curiosity. What are the activities that you've done so far that demonstrate that you're curious about the subject and that you have pursued it on your own, outside of the curriculum, preferably? And again, most importantly, your writing skills. Now, this is very important. When you go to university, your writing skills will really come in handy, whether it's writing your assignments or interacting with your peers. There's many ways this will be useful. So your personal statement is a multifaceted essay that's going to prove all of these different things in you. All right, now there's many ways to write a compelling SOP, but if we were to really narrow it down and really think about a structure, here's what I would say is the best way to do it. So firstly, you should definitely start strong. And how do you do that? Avoid any quotations or cliches, avoid genetic statements, avoid saying, I want to study this subject because, and simply, just put this very simply. I think a really good way to do it is by attracting the reader's interest in the very beginning. So have a hook in your essay. What that means is that you trace back your interest in your subject of choice to a life experience, preferably from when you were younger. So if I were, for example, if I were applying to study biological sciences in the UK, I could start my SOP with something about how when I was younger, I used to visit my grandmother's house every summer. And in the evening, we would go on a walk and see a lake that was filled with tadpoles. Over time, gradually, I saw those tadpoles hatch and mature into frogs. And with those frogs was born my interest in life sciences. Now, what I did there was that I related a specific experience from my life to a more conceptual, abstracted idea, right? What that'll help me do is show that I am a critical thinker who is able to take my experiences and relate them to the subject that I want to study, in addition to establishing that this is a subject that I have naturally been inclined towards. Secondly, I would say as we move on, you want to establish that this is not just an interest that you've shown in your childhood, you've done something to pursue it, right? So what motivates you to study this? Do you really understand what this subject entails? How have you deepened your understanding of the subject over the years? That's sort of what the second paragraph should trace. Now, remember that this is only a tentative structure. You can obviously play around with it. But yeah, if you want, you can have a structure, you can have a strong structure so that you don't feel confused, or your SOP doesn't feel like it's all over the place. Now, once you've established why you want to study what you want to study, a good way to move into the next paragraph is by stating how you furthered your interest in the subject outside of the classroom. So this will bring in your courses, internships, any activities that you participated in, intra-school, national level, state level. But make sure that these activities are limited to the subject that you want to study. If you want to bring in extracurriculars, we strongly advise against it. But if you are bringing it up, make sure that you're talking about the transferable skills from that activity, and then you relate that to the subject of your choice. Now, like I said earlier, UK applications are very, very focused on academics, right? So if you are talking about one specific major, it'll show that you're a disciplined student and you have a certain vision for yourself. And that's sort of the idea that we want to give to the admissions officer. Now, this paragraph usually spills over into two paragraphs. So, so that'll be paragraph 3 and 4. And once you're done with that, the fifth paragraph will come in where you start wrapping up your essay. Now, obviously, you need a strong conclusion to make a strong impact on the reader. So you conclude by going back to what you said in the beginning, and you relate it to your goals for the future. Now, I personally really like essays that are a bit cyclical in nature. So if you have mentioned, an anecdote in the beginning, you may want to go back to that, and you may want to tie up the SOP neatly in a way that also looks forward, right? So how do you want to proceed once you have this degree? What would you want to do? You don't need to highlight your life goals. You don't need to highlight your 10-year plan specifically. Just highlight your life goals broadly and talk about why studying this discipline will help you in that. Um, Another way to go about writing the last paragraph is maybe talk about how you expect to grow at university, or you can talk about, as an international student, you can talk about why you want to study in the UK and what you bring to the table. Now, these questions are only suggestive. If you go to the UCAS website, you will find a guideline on how to write a strong SOP. They will have certain questions that you can choose to attempt before you write your SOP. I would recommend that you sit down, really take, say, half an hour out every day, answer those questions, and then sort of piece it all together in the form of an SOP. And once you're done with that, make sure that you have someone else to proofread it. Your first draft will never be the perfect draft. You'll always need editing, rewriting. So make sure that you have someone else helping you through it. But again, don't show this to 500 different people who give you 500 different opinions. Have one or two trusted people that you want to share your SOP with, and have them proofread it for grammar, syntax, clarity, all those things. And yes, most importantly, listen to yourself and make sure that your SOP is genuine to who you truly are. It'll not be effective if you exaggerate too much or bring up details that may not necessarily have happened. The admissions officer will know when you do that. They have been doing this for years and years. So be genuine, be authentic, and keep it simple and organized and structured. And make sure that you give yourself enough time to work on multiple drafts, which means that if you haven't started writing yet, you should start today. Now, how do you make your application stand out? There's going to be multiple applicants to any university that you're applying to. So some of these things I've already covered, but let's go over them again. So the do's will be authentic. Do not mention things that have not happened. Structure your essay well. Go from paragraph 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and make sure that these paragraphs are not overlapping, but they flow together well. And again, having someone go over your essay will be very helpful in structuring it. Third, use formal language, but not flowery language. So make sure that whatever you've written make sure that the tone is not overly casual or simplistic, that you're taking this seriously. But again, don't use words that you don't really know what they mean or are too flowery. Don't use too many quotations or sayings. Keep it simple and direct. Edit it well and proofread it. And most importantly, you have to trust the process. So have faith in yourself, give yourself time to do it over and over again, and have faith in yourself and your achievements and activities so far. Make sure that you're avoiding quotations or cliches. Do not use chat gpt. It'll not give you specific instances. It'll not make it authentic, and it's not going to work simply. Do not make unsubstantiated claims just to impress the exam, just to impress the admissions officer. It's not going to look well. And don't simply tell an incident. Do not simply tell that I have an aptitude for this. Show how you have that. Back it up with activities that prove that yes, you have worked towards what you're applying to study, and that you have a genuine interest in that. Yes, with that, we come to the end of the presentation. Do you guys have any questions? Okay, so there's one question here in the chat box that says, is UK best choice for computer science, or is there any other choice which is better? Um, Now, that really depends on what you want out of your undergraduate admission. The most important thing that you need to know is that UK is very intensive. It's a 3-year program. So keep in mind the costs. Look at universities in the UK, look at their specific programs. So I would say go to their academics page and look at their academic philosophy, how the department teaches, look at the placements. So all of these smaller things make UK will help you understand whether UK is the right choice for you or not. And it is not an overall, this is not a blanket statement. So I would say research for yourself and research well, and that's probably the best way to go about it. Ma'am, is SOP mandatory for Canada visa? Well, yes, not for Canada visa, but an SOP is mandatory if you're applying to universities. It's known by different names. So the Canadian universities will make you write some essays. The UK SOP is called the personal statement. In the US, it's called a personal essay. But yes, you will have to write essays. That is more or less standard across universities. Is it easy to get into UK for postgrad after doing an undergrad in another country? Yes, it is. Are there scholarships for UG programs in the UK? Yes, there are. Would be, I think that's the standard answer, but it is difficult more so for international applicants. So I would say please look into the program specifically. But I think US usually has more financial aid or scholarships, so maybe look into that as well. When is application filling up? The application portal, the UCAS, is now open. You can start filling out your application. You can only submit it starting 5th September though. Do we need SOP for Indian colleges? Not for all Indian colleges. So for example, DU will require CUET test, but a liberal arts university like Ashoka or Flame will require essays. Do gap years hinder your chances of getting into a top university? Well, not really. Not if you can justify what you did in the gap year. So I think the best way to do that is, in fact, through the SOP. So if you can explain in your SOP what you did in that year and how that relates to your field of study, that's one good way to sort of justify the gap year. How much money we want to start with UK? Again, I would say look into the university's department. Remember that it's a 3-year program. So look into the annual fee, look into the residential, the cost of stay in the city. And yes, and it is very specific to the university. Can we please get to know details about other regions also, such as Canada, etc., in upcoming sessions? Yeah, sure. Okay, I see some more questions. As an Indian student, is UK good for political science and economics, considering we do have the best of the universities in India? Well, that is a really good question. But I would say that the university that you're applying to really depends on your personal needs. So if you want to study in India, if you find that the academics that inspire you teach here, for example, that's maybe one way to go about this. Then yes, this is, I think, then India is a good option. But if you want to go abroad, if you want to have perspective, if you want a classroom with international students, for example, and if you want courses, some of the courses that are not taught in India, then maybe you can also look at the UK. When would be the next admissions for universities abroad? It is ongoing, so now is a good time to start applying for 2024 applications. Do we have to write a short and long-term goals for future in the SOP? Yes, you can choose to do that in the last paragraph, like I mentioned, but what you primarily need to highlight is what you've done so far and how that makes you a good candidate. Ma'am, why does sometimes why is the SOP rejected sometimes? Well, there is no clear-cut answer to that, Komalveer. Um, I think what you can do from your end is make sure that the SOP is structured well. It's easy to read. It flows well. It highlights your achievements and interests in a fair manner. And I think from there, it is sort of up to the admissions officer. But yeah, from what you should do what you can from your end, and then we see where it goes from there. What extracurriculars can I join to strengthen my SOP? I'm planning to pursue architecture. Also, I have American citizenship. Do I still need to write IELTS? No, if you have an American citizenship, you don't need to take the IELTS. But yes, I think we can maybe I'll drop my email in the chat box. We can discuss your what specific extracurriculars you can do maybe at some other time. If somebody does their bachelor's or higher studies from abroad, then are they eligible for undertaking government exams? Again, that's very specific, but largely the answer would be yes. But look at what you're choosing to apply to, and I think you will know the answer to that. Is IELTS necessary? Because I heard it depends on the university. No, as an Indian applicant applying abroad, you will have to take IELTS. I'm in grade 12 currently. I will finish in spring 2024. When should I start applying? I would say now is a good time to start applying. If you want to start, if you do not want to take a gap year, and if you want to continue going to college next year onwards, then both the US and UK applications should start now. IB students get their result in July, so when should they apply? Ah, you should start applying now. You will have to submit, your school will have to submit your tentative grades. And on the basis of that, in the UK, you get a conditional acceptance. And once you meet your predicted grades or requirements, that's automatically converted to an offered acceptance. Ma'am, what are the advantages of SOP? Well, well, think of it this way. This is your only chance to make a case for yourself in written to the examination to the admissions officer. So it is super important, and how you do that is up to you. But yes, I would say the advantage is that it is you get roughly 600 words to talk about yourself, to make a case for yourself. Yes, that's the biggest advantage. Do I have to take the IELTS if I'm an IB student? Yes, you do. What all is required if you're looking for a full ride scholarship? Well, I would say look at the specific website. Make sure that you have good academics. Make sure that your extracurriculars are great. Make sure that you've done some work towards what you want to study. And some scholarships will ask you to write additional essays. So definitely look into those. Does UK give 100% scholarships? No, not to international applicants, not that I know of. But definitely not on undergraduate level. But some master's students do get 100% scholarships. Yes. What is the most important part of SOP? Well, that's arguable. I would say the entire SOP is important because it's just 600 words, so it has to be crisp from beginning to end. But some people probably would say that either the beginning or the end is most important. But I would say it is right from the beginning to the very end. I think every word has to be measured, and everything that you're putting on there has to make sense. Are ISC board students sidelined as compared to international boards, as ISC is a private national board of India? No, that's not really the case. As long as you have decent academics, these ISCs accepted, it's a board accepted everywhere. You can submit your grades and they will consider you just as well as they would consider any other applicant. Are there any other questions? Okay, I have another question. I want to pursue law. So would UK be better or India, considering that you can practice law with a degree from either country? Mukta, I would say again, it is very much dependent on your needs. So definitely look at both the options, research thoroughly, and then maybe make a decision such as this. Some of the factors that you can consider would be fees, location, um, maybe your extracurriculars and your own profile, career options, all of these things will together, I think, they'll all come together to answer a complex question such as this. By what date all these work be done for 2024 applications, and what's the best time for Canada, especially for UBC or something? All right, so again, I would say definitely keep an eye out for the deadlines on the websites, on the respective websites. But for the UK specifically, the applications are evaluated on a rolling basis, and what that means is that as you submit your application, it will be reviewed, which means that seats will keep getting filled up. So the sooner you apply, the better it is. And the application, you can start submitting the application to the UK on 5th September. But for Canada, it's usually slightly later, depends on the university. But you can roughly look at November, December, January of this year. Is it important to be a legal intern in order to apply for law in a good university? Well, not really, but it will give you a certain advantage because it will show that you've done something to explore your interest. So you've explored your academic interest outside of the classroom, and that will give you an edge, definitely. But it's obviously not a requirement. But yeah, but make sure that if you haven't done that, then make sure that there's other things that kind of balance that. Is it mandatory to have a recommendation letter in your application? As far as I know, yes, it is. And it is, I think, it really adds to your application. So definitely speak to a teacher, a counselor from your school about this, and definitely send it. It's good. Although I have participated in MUNs, I haven't won any prizes as such. Should I include that as well then? Well, not really. If you think that these MUNs add something to your academic achievements or your academic pursuit, then yes. So, for example, if you're writing about wanting to work in the government, for example, or wanting to pursue political science or international relations, then it will add value. But otherwise, you can skip it if you have other things. Do we need to write SAT for UK colleges? No, you don't. SAT is for US only, and since COVID, it is also optional in a lot of universities. Can you take TOEFL rather than IELTS? Yes, you can. But we find that a lot of Indian students find taking IELTS easier. They score better on it. But yes, technically you can. Ma'am, what can we write in the SOP in the beginning? Well, you can always start with something personal. Um, so something that's personal yet related to the subject that you want to study. So, like the example that I'd given, you can talk about a specific instance from your life where you realize that you're really interested in the field of your in the field that you want to study. So that's one good way to begin it. But there's no fixed rules as such, so you can play around and see what works well in your SOP. How long should an ideal SOP B. It's about 4,000 characters, which comes down to 600 words, roughly. We are getting certain questions that are very specific to your field of study. So, for example, this one says, what correlated activities can you add to your SOP if you're planning to study in the field of genomics? I would say it would be best to research this, but one thing that you can always do is write a research paper on your own. So maybe pick an academic from your discipline whose work has influenced you. Maybe pick two of them and then write a research paper write a research paper that sort of not comparing exactly, but sort of um, takes the ideas forward. So I think that that's a good start. But other than that, like, it is very specific to your field of study. So research and find activities and sort of decide that for yourself. What entrances are we supposed to give for masters in UK? There are no entrances that you have entrance examinations that you have to take, but you do have to take the language proficiency test. Now, it could be IELTS, most preferably, or something like a TOEFL as well. All right. I think if you guys have any more questions, you can write to me on this email address. Any final questions before we sign off? All right, I think with that, we've come to the end of this presentation. Thank you everyone for your questions and all the best for your application.